Good afternoon and welcome to this week's episode of Rachel Gaffney's Real Ireland, live from the Lincoln Center in Dallas, Texas. And today is November the 27th, the day before Thanksgiving. Hi Anna, happy Thanksgiving.
Hi Rachel, I'm so excited. It's Thanksgiving and we have a very topical show today.
Oh, don't we just? I'm feeling a bit hungry. We're going to be going straight in talking about food, and today we're not going to be talking about pumpkin pies or turkeys. That's probably somewhere in the cookbooks that this lady has written. But it is very, very appropriate that we are talking to a woman who embodies food and what's so special about food. So she has been dubbed the Julia Child of Ireland by the San Francisco Chronicle. And that is none other than the famous Darina Allen from East Cork, the very famous Ballymaloe House and Ballymaloe Cookery School in Ireland. She is a tireless ambassador for food, for Irish food, both at home and abroad. And she was also very instrumental in setting up the farmers market movement in Ireland. She is just passionate about food. She is one of the councillors for the slow food movement in Ireland. And along with her brother, Rory O'Connell, she and Rory set up the world famous Ballymaloe Cookery School back in 1983. And to this day, this cookery school is thriving and people are coming from all over the world to attend this cookery school. Well, good afternoon, Darina, and welcome to Dallas, Texas.
Aha, lovely to be here.
We're thrilled to have you here. So for people watching, we've told them who you are and what you do, and I thought we'd go straight into it and talk about the lovely, we'll start at the beginning with where it all began at Ballymaloe House and Restaurant in East Cork in Ireland. Mm-hmm. So maybe you could tell us really briefly about Ballymaloe House, and maybe you could show some photos in the background, Anna, of Ballymaloe House. We might run some of those, but where did it start? How did it start?
Well, as you can see from the photographs, it's a huge, big old country house in the middle of a 400-acre farm. And my parents-in-law, Myrtle and Ivan Allen, when the children had all gone to school in the 60s to boarding school, they were rattling around in the house. So my mother-in-law, Myrtle Allen, decided she'd open a little restaurant in their house. And this one's considered to be a totally crazy thing to do then, because it was right out in the country, miles away. It's about over half an hour from Cork City, and people just didn't open restaurants out in the country at that time. And she wrote the menu every day depending on what was in the gardens and what food was available in the local area. We're very close to that little fishing village of Ballycotton as well, so there was lovely fresh fish. And so it was the first country house hotel in the British Isles, and considered to be a crazy idea. But Myrtle, just from the first day, she served the sort of food that you'd serve to your family and friends. And she said she'd never have more than 20 people. But now, of course, she's looked back on as a total pioneer. There are sort of terms for everything she did. It's totally farm to fork. Everything. The food is all cooked from scratch. All of these kind of terms that people talk about now. It was always sustainable. It was all part of a sort of circular economy. But nowadays, Myrtle is looked on, and quite rightly, as somebody who led the way, a woman who was really liberated without even thinking about the word feminism or anything like that. Yeah. So happy in her own skin, totally aware of the importance of looking after her family, and also of highlighting, as she did, the beautiful food that was in the local area. And I mean, the food was she always served local food in season. That was just the way she cooked. It was the way she cooked for her children and indeed for guests when they came to the house originally. So I remember my husband, who was at boarding school at the time, saying, they had got a letter, and she said the restaurant was going to be open. They'd heard a little bit about chat about that. And so he couldn't wait to get home for holidays. He thought that, she'd be serving real food like in a restaurant, mixed grills and steak and chips and everything. And he was disgusted to find that she was serving the same food to the guests as she served to them. But they had their own Jersey herd, so she was making, of course, homemade ice cream, and and so they had their own pigs and cows and chickens, and a 2-acre walled garden full of vegetables and everything in season. So, and at that stage, remember, local in Ireland was almost a derogatory term. So the idea of serving local food was sort of, instead of foie gras or truffles or something, was considered to be, why would you do that? But Myrtle always knew how incredible the produce that we have in Ireland is. We're a small country with a very high percentage of rich, fertile soil, wonderful fish from our coastline. So we have beautiful ingredients that, and for any cook or any chef, it's all about the ingredients. So if you start off with a piece of beautiful fresh fish or some lovely, fruit or vegetables, you need to do so little to make it taste totally delicious. Whereas if you start off with mass-produced, denatured food, then you have to be a magician. That's where all the twiddles and bows and smarties on top come in, when you're trying to compensate for the fact that the flavour wasn't there in the first place.
I heard you sing a comment earlier on, which I loved. Anna, you'll appreciate this, was the tweezer-free kitchen. Yes. Where everything is sort of, no disrespect to people who are artists in the kitchen and everything, yes. But, I think most of us, truthfully, Darina, would love a bowl of stew or a shepherd's pie, or you just said having Jersey cows,
yes,
and having homemade ice cream.
Beautiful Jersey cream, and we make our own butter as well.
Do you?
We have at the cooking school, we have a little herd of Jersey cows, just 8 or 9 cows. So we make our own cheese and butter and yoghurt, and the butter is yellow, dark yellow of course the cows are, as all cattle are in Ireland pretty much, are out grass fed out in the field. So we have that wonderful rich colour.
Yeah. Now going back to, so when Myrtle started this in the 60s and was the restaurant, then when did they start admitting, it sounds like a hospital, when did they start accepting guests?
Well, after, just 3 or 4 years, I think.
Okay.
Because people wanted to stay when they came out. They wanted to stay for the night. And there were already 16 bedrooms in the house. So Myrtle and Ivan decided they would do up, I think it was 10 or 11 bedrooms. And that then they could automatically get a spirit license as well if they did that. And so they, and then people started to stay. And then, of course, when people arrived, it's really funny because we have such a repeat business. I mean, Ballymaloe is over 50. That was 1964, I think they started, 1966 or 7. They had bedrooms, but we still have people who are brought as children, bringing their children back again to Ballymaloe. So they're, in this case, the 3rd generation are coming back to Ballymaloe, and it's like coming back for a family holiday every year.
That absolutely is. I have an aunt living in Cork who was recently at a wedding, and it was at Ballymaloe, and it's her best friend who lives in Ballycotton, right along the, where
the little fishing village close to us.
Yeah, she lives on the waterfront there, and she got married there recently. She's an older lady now, but she had her wedding in Ballymaloe. Yeah. And so it's funny how, that's just a little nostalgia there for me. But when they came to stay...
the kids, you see, love it as well, because they can run down onto the farmyard and play in the bales of hay and play in the sand heap just outside the door and be real children, just run around. And then there's a children's tea every evening. They collect the eggs and bring them up and have them for supper and so on. So they love all of that.
You shared her philosophy because you came along, you had your background as in... you were trained and...
Well, I did hotel... You see, I was, at this stage now, I'm 71, and when I was at boarding school with the Dominican nuns in Wicklow, they were encouraging us girls to have a proper career. They were very visionary nuns, do medicine, do science, do law, do architecture, and all I wanted to do was cook. Right. And because my mother loved to cook and knew the importance of feeding us well, she used to say, she knew that our food should be our medicine, and she used to say, well, if you don't put the effort into the food on the table, you'll give it to the doctor or the chemist. But all I knew was cooking or gardening. We had a kitchen garden and a house cow and all of that at home as well. And so the nuns were disgusted with it. Well, disgusted is a bit of a strong word. They would say, you're never going to need to be able to cook. cook, my dear. You know, you're going to have somebody to do that for you. And so I really insisted. But at that stage, men were chefs. I mean, cooks and you know, and also they had no status. It was years before celebrity chefs. So the subliminal message was that these basic practical skills were of much lesser value than academic skills. And it's still the same emphasis in education, you know, the STEM subjects, and we're now letting third generation out of our houses without giving them the basic skills to feed themselves, and out of our schools. So this is a crisis really too. But anyway, so I had to do either hotel management or a degree in horticulture, and I decided to do hotel management. And then still my dilemma, you know, where would I get a job? I couldn't get into any of the top restaurants in Ireland, and you could have counted them easily on one hand in the late 60s, because, as I said, men were the chefs with the high hats and so on. So I was very fortunate. You never know in your life what's the tiny thing that can change the rest of your life. In this case, it was one of the senior lecturers met me one day in the corridor, knew I hadn't got a job yet, and all the others had, because you'd have got a job as an assistant manager in one of the posh hotels. And I didn't want, that was another name for slave as far as I was concerned, and I really wanted to cook. So I told her what I wanted. She told me I was far too fussy. And then she said, funny, I was at a dinner party the other night, and they were the hostess was telling me about this woman down in Cork who's opened a restaurant in her own house out in the country, miles away from the city. And, you know, they, you know, make their own ice cream, and I had a fixation about making ice cream, to read all that sort of thing. And they have a kitchen garden. She writes the menu every day. Remember, that was considered to be outrageous or really amateurish, actually, to open a menu every day at that time. And anyway, I couldn't believe my ears. I thought, that's perfect. But she couldn't remember her name. So she went back and came back a few days later with a piece of paper. She handed me a piece of paper and she said, this is the name of the woman, write to her. And so I wrote to Myrtle, and I then became a member of the family by the simple expedient of marrying the boss's son. So that's how it's done.
So that's how you became an Allen.
I came to Ballymaloe, and of course I loved it from the moment I arrived. And Myrtle reinforced all of my mother's values around food. And, you know, there were, you know, when the gooseberries were in season, they'd be on, or mackerel or whiting. These are sort of foods that were never seen on restaurant menus at that time. I remember local kids would come up to the kitchen door with little tins of wild blackberries and mushrooms and sloes and damsons, and she'd put those on the menu, and all of that, those forage foods, which people we didn't even know the word foraging then. So Myrtle incorporated those into the menu because she was writing it every day. And so I remember years later somebody saying to her, you know, not very long before she died, you know, you were such a pioneer, you know, you did all of these things that now everybody is wanting to say they're doing and all of that. And she said, well, you know, if you live long enough, they come round to you in the end. So she was so...
But she was doing what came naturally to her.
She was doing what came naturally to her, and people absolutely loved it. And within a couple of years, she had the top rating in the Food Guides in the British Isles. And of course, at the Ballymaloe Cookery School, which we established in 1983, we follow exactly the same philosophy.
And what made... So you founded the cookery school in 1983 with your brother, Rory O'Connell.
Exactly.
And that has gone on from strength to strength.
Yes. And actually, it's amazing. Within 2 years, we had our first American student. I remember I changed my little brochure from Ballymaloe Cooking School to Ballymaloe International Cooking School. And I remember this lovely girl called Tabby Dillon from America. Am I the I at international? But it always surprises people that people come literally, and have for a long time now, from all over the world to the Ballymaloe Cooking School, because it's a non-farm cooking school. It's the middle of a 100-acre organic farm, and we have acres of garden. We have an acre of greenhouses. We have 10 acres of garden, actually.
10 acres.
Vegetable and herbs and herb garden and everything, and also an acre of greenhouses. So basically, the students can learn literally how to cook from the farm to the fork. They go out with the gardeners in the morning. They can go down and learn how to milk a cow and make butter, cheese and yogurt and forage and ferment. And the bread shed is open at 6 in the morning. They go in and learn how to make sourdough bread there. So people love learning. And you know, I give a special welcome to American students, because I know what they've had to go through when they tell their friends they're coming to Ireland to a cooking school, and they say, are you crazy? Ireland? You know, because the image of Ireland years ago was the land of corned beef and cabbage.
It
and
still unfortunately is a little bit
well,
here.
Well, it's like totally different to that now.
Yeah.
I mean, the food we've grown so much in confidence. Of course, people travel more and more and realise you have to travel to realise often what you have under your own nose is so brilliant. And now, so in pubs and little cafes and restaurants and hotels all around the country, the food is is wonderful. I mean, you have to do a bit of research, like you have to when you go to any country. But you see, we have such beautiful produce and wonderful. We can grow grass like nowhere else in the world. So our dairy products, you can get our lovely butter over here, the Kerrygold butter, and our beef and our lamb and our fish, of course. So we're like so favoured by nature. And so now it's not, when people come to Ireland, it's not just for the friendly, lovely people and, our landscape, which is so beautiful. You can be absolutely assured you're going to have delicious food all the time. Yeah.
And I can vouch for that because I have been to Ballymaloe, and in fact I was there in September, and I must get this photograph, and I was telling Darina earlier on, I must get it and share it with you guys. I posted it on my Instagram page, and I didn't know this. I was bowled over. We were all sitting around having dinner, and then dessert came, and along came your lovely sweet trolley.
That's right.
And do you remember the days of a sweet trolley?
Yeah, it's it's 70s, isn't it?
I love it. All I could think of was my grandmother, because we used to go to restaurants and hotels, for your first communion or your confirmation. It was a big deal to go. Yes, and we would go to, I remember my mum and dad used to go to Arbutus Lodge, if you remember, and all those. Ryan's. But I remember my grandmother, her first thing always was to check out the sweet trolley before dinner.
Yeah.
But anyway, I noticed yours was particularly beautiful. Yeah. And then you told me that you went to an award ceremony in Paris.
The World Restaurant Awards Trolley of the Year Award in Paris at the inaugural awards this year. It was like the Oscars of food awards. Right. And that's J.R., our pastry chef. You see, this wonderful, that homemade ice cream is different every day, made with the Jersey cream and so on, served in that bowl of ice, and then the meringues, all the different things. And we always have carrageen moss on as well. That's an Irish seaweed.
I was going to say, would you explain to people about the carrageen moss maybe a little bit, and the pudding, or what you do with it?
Basically, it's also so important that that one can serve not only local food proudly, but also give people a taste of our food culture in Ireland. And a lot of people would think that food culture in Ireland are anathema, but we have so much. But so one of the things that's absolutely part of our food culture is a little seaweed called carrageen. It means little rock in Gaelic, and we pick it off the little rocks over near Ballyandreen early on in the year. Traditionally it would have been spread out on the grassy cliffs and bleached by the sun and washed by the rain, and then you bring it in and it lasts for years, and it's absolutely loaded with iodine and other trace elements, and it doesn't taste of iodine, but then it's a natural gelatine, as all of the seaweeds are, and super good for you. And so we make a lovely light carrageen moss pudding with that, and serve it with
Is that always on your menu?
It's always, that's on every night on the sweet trolley, because we can't take it off. No. And then everything changes every night. But basically, and we serve it with a soft brown sugar and some Jersey pouring cream. And oh my God.
Are you hungry yet, Anna, listening to this?
I am.
Are you hungry?
Oh my God, yes I am.
Well, and that
sounds delicious.
Well, that brings me into, talking about, the moss, the seaweed, sorry, not this moss, the seaweed.
Yes, that will be in that one.
And so this is one, I brought this in because this is one of my favourite books, which is The Forgotten Skills of Cooking. Now, that book, I think, came out in 2009 or something. It did,
and it won the Andrew Simon Award, which was so exciting for me, because that's the kind of Oscars of cookbook awards. And this is literally, this came about because I was in the kitchen in the cooking school one day, and we have hens, of course, so we have hens buckets in every section, scraps that from the cooking in the morning go into the hens bucket and come back as eggs a few days later. It's all part of the kind of circular thing. But anyway, I met a student making a dash, kind of looking a bit flustered with a bowl in her hands, making a dash for the... And I said, she looked a bit flustered, and I said to her, what's that? She said, oh, I was whipping cream and it's gone too far and I'm going to give it to the hens, which would normally be a good thing rather than throwing it out. Yes. And I said, no. I looked into the bowl and said, no, you've made butter. You've almost made butter. So this girl, 5 weeks into a 12-week course, by the way, knew, I think, that butter came from cream, but had no idea how it got from cream to butter. And so I just got, I put it back onto the mixer, beat it up, and by then 3/4 of the class were around me and wide-eyed looking at how butter was made, and I thought, oh my God, these skills are forgotten. And I, as a child, of course, had learned how to make butter with my great aunt in County Tipperary. And so I immediately started to write a book on forgotten skills. And we have a whole series of forgotten skills courses as well.
Oh, you
how
do?
how to make butter, cheese and yogurt, how to cure a pig in a day, how to build a smoker and smoke your own food, how to make all of, ferment, foraging, of course, for wild food. So they all, so this book was literally written as a result of that chance encounter in one of the kitchens one day.
So you see this one here, which is the
How to make
yogurt making and that.
Yeah, look at how the yogurt is so thick and beautiful. That's just the Jersey milk and the yogurt culture, live
And
yogurt
if you want
culture.
to, do this yourself,
At home,
you can.
yeah.
No, but if you don't want to do it yourself, you want to go learn how to do it. I strongly suggest that you actually sign up, and we'll have the links up for Ballymaloe Cookery School, because they do 12-week courses, they do 5-week courses, they do half-day courses.
And sustainable food production courses, 1 days as well. And if you're in the area, you can just swing in for an afternoon. We do a cookery demonstration every afternoon, and then of course we do bespoke courses as well. So, and it's cooking courses and all of these other forgotten skills courses as well. So, and the gardens, by the way, are open to the public as well, all year round. They're acres of garden and so on, and a shell house that people can, and a 1/4 acre Celtic maze. Actually, I forgot to tell you that.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
But look, you talk about, we're looking at pictures of your lovely gardens coming up there.
Yeah.
So
yes, this is a Ballymaloe House. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, which is the cookery school is down the is not on the grounds of Ballymaloe House. That's just down the road. It's only
but it's about
5 minutes.
But it's 2 miles, so it's very very close. And that's in the middle of a 100-acre organic farm. And what we don't produce ourselves, we buy locally from a whole network of farmers and fishermen and cheesemakers and fish smokers. We have about 150 local producers who we buy directly from as well.
Which leads me into my question I wanted to ask you, because I know that the word, I am actually almost allergic to the word passion sometimes, because everybody's passionate about something nowadays.
Yeah,
and
it's a bit overused.
Well, I think it is.
Yeah.
It's like the word super. Everything is super.
Yeah.
But the word passion, and I think passion, you said about Myrtle, people say she was passionate. Well, it's just because she believed it.
Yes.
And I think if you believe something,
and it's kind of the way
it comes out.
Yeah, and it wasn't a conversion
truth.
on the road to Damascus. It's just the way we were.
But
really.
you are passionate about sustainability.
Yeah.
And I'd really like if you could just spend a few minutes talking about, both in Ireland and even over here in the United States, and in general, how we cook, how we eat, how we, what do you see happening, changing, or explaining
Well, thank
to people
goodness
what
there's a conversation
sustainability-
about it now, and I think people are becoming more and more aware that there is an absolute crisis, and our food needs to be our medicine. So all we need is real food, not edible food-like substances, as Michael Pollan says. And so, but where to get it is the thing. So link in with, if you can. I know everybody's so busy, and in fact this book, One Pot Feeds All, is dedicated to the busy young people who are trying to keep all the balls in the air, feed the kids and race home from work, all of that. But basically what we need to somehow or other to get to farmers markets, maybe linked directly with the farmers, and more over here I notice now there are more and more small farmers that will sell direct to you. So it's just real food, and the food then is the nourishment, and then you don't have to spend a whole ton of money on supplements and vitamins and minerals and so on. I was brought up to know that, as a real fact. So, and I mean, everywhere I talk to people, they're worried about the health of their children, they're worried about what's going on. So there's a growing awareness of the importance.
Everybody's taking something. Everybody's got something in their handbag here.
Yes, but in a
Drugs.
way, I think, sometimes people say to me, and I say, for goodness sake, get as much. The older I am, the more I realise it is vital to get food that is chemical free. You can call it organic, you can call it biodynamic, you can call it whatever you like, but really we have enough toxins that our body's fighting against more and so on. So people sometimes say to me, it's all very fine for you because the perception is that I can afford organic food or whatever. But hey, how much money are you spending on meds and on supplements and all the rest of it? And, if one can give a little bit more effort and time, and time is such a precious thing, and okay, maybe a bit more money, investing it in real food, real nourishing, wholesome food. My goodness, the difference it'll make to your health and to the health of your children and to your lifestyle. And for goodness sake, cook. This is the other sad thing, that so many people of my generation, the next generation, were told, oh, it's so super not cool to actually cook. You can have it all. You can just go and heat up something, and that's why often over here people say talking about fixing food rather than actually cooking food. But it is such a wonderful skill to be able to cook, and it's so it really is easy somehow or other. Sometimes if there's something that you can't do, you think it's a mystery. I can take anybody from this is a wooden spoon to being able to give a dinner party and feed their family well in just a week, and or even in less, you know. And my recipes and all my cookbooks are really simple. And
what is this new one?
This
now,
one is,
by the way, this one is out in Ireland.
Yes.
And it's already won an award.
Yes, and this is on Amazon all the rest of it all the time.
Well, this is my favourite one. Nobody can have this.
Yeah, and
this
there's Grow, Cook, Nourish as well, which is another one of the ones.
You know that? Did I show that photograph, Anna, of Grow, Cook, Nourish? Because you said to me before, I heard you say that you think that was one of the most important
the
works
Grow, Cook,
you ever...
Nourish book. It took me 3 years to write, and I think it's the most important book.
3 years to write that book.
And it's the most important book I'll ever write.
On the screen.
And so...
there it is, Grow, Cook,
exactly.
Okay, and that's still available.
That's saying to people, for goodness sake, let's wake up and see what's happened over the last decade or 2 decades. We've just handed over complete control over our food choices to the supermarkets and the multinational food companies. And look, we can't expect them to have our best interest at heart, because I mean their responsibility is to their shareholders. So our responsibility is our health and our and the food and so on. So, but actually at the school we have one. I love teaching people how to cook as well. I mean I could be teaching maths or geometry, but basically we have one teacher with every 6 students at the Ballymaloe Cookery School.
That's a great ratio.
So it's a great, it's, I mean, normally it's 1 to 12 or 1 to 15. So but it's such a, you see, if I teach somebody how to make a loaf of bread or soda bread or a soup or something, it's all like giving them a gift for life. And then they can build on that.
What did we just do 2 weeks ago, Anna, in here?
Oh, yes.
You'll have to tell Darina, what did we do?
Oh my gosh. So Rachel, let me punch my camera. So Rachel brought us in amazing soup, and we all gathered
big
around
Le Creuset thing of homemade soup, homemade soda bread.
Yes.
And we talked about soups and baking, and I was saying, does anybody make anything anymore just to give them to somebody as well as a present? The joy.
I mean,
I love
you can
feeding people.
It's so much better than bring a little couple of pots of soup or something. It's if you're going to somebody for dinner, or a pot of jam or a loaf of bread. I mean, it's so much better than a dodgy bottle of wine,
But tell us about this book. How did this one come about? I love
this one again is desperate to. Everybody's getting more and more busier and busier and busier, and in Ireland as everywhere else, dashing at work, dashing home through the crazy traffic, trying to pick up the kids from the creche, dash into the supermarket to get a few ingredients, and then knowing the importance of putting something on the table. So this one is one pot feeds all. So every recipe in this, and I put so much effort into having this really yummy things. Everything is in one pot, one roasting tin, one baking tray, and they're delicious puddings in it as well.
Oh, look at this.
And things then it might be something that has potatoes in as well, like the quintessential one pot meal is Irish stew, actually, which in fact isn't in that because it's in lots of other books that I do. But basically with beans, see this one has always lovely beans and pumpkin, black-eyed bean, pumpkin and chickpeas stew. Super delicious, to use that overused term again. But there's pearl barley, with pearl barley, with rice. We even have one pot pasta dishes in it. And I said to my editor, that's not possible. She said, try it. And it really works.
Oh my gosh.
One pot pasta dishes.
I love the idea
and this is really, I dedicated to all those busy, heroic young people trying to keep all the balls in the air, saying, look, you can take your slow cooking pot, or you can take just an ordinary pot, put everything into it, let it bubble, and then come home and just pop it onto the table.
Do you think anybody can make this?
Yes. Anybody can make any of my recipes. And
Challenge.
They're really well tested. So if
do you know who we're challenging?
Who are we challenging?
Sarah Crilly, the journalist here at Real News PR.
Yeah. Get her to make this.
Sarah's on a bent since I started doing the soups. Remember, she came in here. She's been emailing me and texting me every day. She wants things that she wants to make for her family, soup or one pot. You said, I can't do these things like you. And I said, yes, you can.
Yes.
So I'm going to see if we can get her to make this. I'm going to get this recipe and give it to her.
Yes, good.
And then we're going to follow up on air. What do you think?
But you know what we need in all of our countries, in Ireland and here in America, we must get cooking embedded in the national curriculum again. And also it's, we need to get it made as a primary subject so that no kid can leave school without their final, I don't know what you call it in this country, A-levels, leaving cert, without being able to prove that they can cook. And if you can cook, you're totally in charge of, your own health and all the rest of it. And you can spread so much joy around. And it's what memories are made of, sitting down around the kitchen table with family and friends.
Well, I have to finish on 3 questions, if I may, from people who have emailed or contacted and saying, please, could you ask Darina these for us?
Okay.
So this is from a lady in Ohio. Her name is Fiona Quaid, and she's originally from Cork, but she's been living here a long time. And she said, first of all, she said to tell you she has every one of your cookbooks, and this is going to be her next one.
In February.
February in 2020, by the way, but we'll put the link up to that. But Fiona wants to know, she said she misses making bread pudding.
Oh.
And obviously she used to buy, bread in the grocery store at home, which it's not the same here. What she wants to know, could you recommend any breads that she could buy here for making bread pudding?
Well, I think sourdough is a little bit strong for it. So basically one of the French bread loaves or whatever can be a couple of days old. Or brioche, of course, makes the most amazing bread pudding as well. And I'm not sure if, I wonder if there's a bread pudding in that one. But anyway, if she needs, there's certainly in this one here, there's a bread and butter pudding, as we call it. And don't change it. There's cream and milk in it. But make sure that you don't use low-fat anything. Just
no.
Go for it and have it. And it'll be the best bread pudding you ever had in your life.
Oh my gosh. A gentleman in Chattanooga, Tennessee, Terry Butler, he wanted to know if you had, he was interested in something we did recently. We were talking about sage and and basically it was about different herbs being good for you. And as you mentioned about food being thy medicine, even Hippocrates himself said, let medicine be thy food, let thy food be thy medicine.
Yes.
Just remember that. But Terry Butler wants to know, have you got anything that you'd recommend that we could possibly make with sage that you like?
I love sage. And sage, the word of a lot of these, the name of a lot of these herbs and things give you an insight into their medicinal qualities as well. So sage, really good for your memory as well, as is rosemary. And
really?
Yes, exactly. And for your brain function, all of that. But we love sage. We don't use it enough really. I suppose the most traditional thing would be to put a little sage, chop it up into a stuffing, roast duck or roast goose, which is coming up to Christmas now. But I also love little sage fritters. So you could dip them in a very light little batter and deep fry them, and oh my god, or even not even put them in a batter, just do some olive oil in the pan and just throw them into the pan, and they'll frizzle up. And do you know what's even better? Then crack in a lovely fresh egg into it and then baste it in the sage flavoured oil, and it'll get all crispy around the edges, and then you have all these crispy sage leaves. It's absolutely delicious. So there's so many good things. And that other Tuscan thing where they make a little sandwich with a little anchovy, 2 sage leaves, a little anchovy in the middle, and dip it in a light batter and deep fry them and have them just with drinks. Oh my goodness.
And the last question, those are fantastic. The last one I have for you is from a company in Ireland actually called Urban Aran, because they're based in Waterford. I follow those. They actually make a lot of beautiful wool blankets, so I'm giving them a call out. They're lovely. But they said, she said, Rachel, I love that they keep this. She's referring to Ballymaloe House, your restaurant and your cookery school, and your philosophy. I love that they keep their food simple, non-fussy, but absolutely packed full of flavour. Is this achieved through growing most of your own vegetable and herbs? Basically, they want to know how you keep why your flavour is so great.
We are and always have been passionate about sourcing ingredients. So it starts, what have we on our own farm and gardens and so on. And then we have, as I mentioned earlier, a whole network of small producers that we've built up over the years that we link in with to get, who rear us ducks and chickens and geese. So he's quite right. It's all about the quality of the produce. And if you start off with this lovely fresh produce, then you can keep your food very simple. So people, when they taste something on the plate, they go, wow, what was that? And a lot of people actually, when they taste the food, they think, my God, is that what carrots are meant to taste like? Or whatever. They just have forgotten how good food that, that's grown slowly and carefully in really rich, fertile soil can taste. And animals that are reared and birds that are reared properly for the table. And then we celebrate them on a plate in their life on a plate at Ballymaloe House.
Well, I think that was a perfect way to end the segment on with the question from Urban Aran, because really her question, I think, was more of a statement, considering we just talked everything you've talked about for the last half hour, that she asked that question, which you had already answered. It's everything, your philosophy, and it didn't just start last week.
That's right.
This is a lifetime.
It was not a conversion on the road to Damascus,
No.
the way we always were.
And this is not an easy road either. You know,
Yes.
people look at you in 19 cookbooks and it's successful, but there are bumps and bruises.
Yes.
There's difficulties.
Yeah.
There's hard work and labour and sweat and worry.
Well,
and
that's the same in any business, and
but
so
it
on.
does. We got to remember that goes
Yes.
into it too.
Yes,
you know,
quite.
it's not luck.
Yes.
Right.
Well, combination of luck and hard work.
Sometimes
generally
a little
does
bit
it.
or something.
Yes.
But so
Yeah.
if anybody wants to order any of the cookbooks, we'll have the links up. We'll also have links up to the social media accounts for Ballymaloe House, Ballymaloe Cookery School. We'll show you. We'll give the links to everything, so you can stalk them on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and you can see they're sharing every day all their updates from the farm. And I know that Darina has a newsletter which you put out Saturday musings.
Oh yeah, well, there's every week actually. The Saturday letter I write for the Irish Examiner every week, and 2 pages in the weekend section. So that goes up online as well. So that's right.
Those are really
and
nice.
if anybody's in the area, they can just swing by any afternoon and
Shanagary
remind
area,
us where
right?
we met.
Yes,
we met on Rachel Gaffney's Real Ireland.
All right.
Thank you,
Well,
Rachel.
listen, thanks a million for coming in.
Well, you know, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks
It's so
for-
nice talking to you.
You too.